Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Pursuit of a Parlay. I am, as always, your host, Chris Horwedel. We're gonna try something a little bit different this week. We find ourselves in that weird middle week. We've got the Pro Bowl, but no real football. There's some NBA games tonight, but I thought we would take things in a little bit of a different direction. As I always do, before we get going, I'll thank you for your continued support. Broke 90,000 subs on the YouTube channel, so if you are watching us on YouTube, please continue. Like, subscribe, leave us comments, all of that stuff. Take part in the action. If you're listening to us on Spotify or the podcast provider of your choice, rate, review, do all of that good stuff. Reach out. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all of that, because we're so incredibly appreciative of the support, and it's really overwhelming. There's nothing else to say. Thank you. It's overwhelming. I appreciate that you guys allow us to do this every single week. So let's dig right into this. Like I said, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach this week. This is going to be the heavy favorites week. We're going to take a look at the world of college basketball, specifically men's college basketball, and we're going to give a bunch of heavy favorites, and we're going to see what the parlay looks like at the end. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be informative. It's a little bit of an experiment. So bear with me, check it out, and let's see what happens. As always, I have bovadasportsbook.com open in front of me. That's where we're going to get all of our lines for the show, and let's dig right into it. First game we're going to talk about right here, number 4 Alabama against LSU. We're showing Bama's going to win this one outright about 90% of the time. And yeah, that makes some sense. They're in first place in the SEC at 19-3. Brandon Miller has been a revelation for the Crimson Tide, a guy who came in without a ton of fanfare, but now looks like he could potentially be a top 5 pick in the draft, leads this team in scoring at 19.2. They score a ton of points, and they can rebound the basketball. 83.3 points per game for Alabama, and they rebound 45.3 times per game, which is good for second in all of college basketball. Moving on to LSU, the Tigers, a little underwhelming. 12-10, 12th place in the SEC. They're led by forward KJ Williams, 17.1 points per game. Only scoring 67 points per game, 332nd in the nation. They don't rebound particularly well. They don't pass the ball particularly well. It's just a very mediocre LSU team this year. So, with that said, we're looking at 1-8 in conference versus 9-0 in conference, and we think Bama's going to jump up to 10-0 in conference after this one. So our first pick here is going to be Alabama money line, minus 700. We're going heavy favorites and locks. And that is going to take our parlay one pick in all the way up to crazy money, minus 700 at Bovada. Let's see where this goes. Our next game, another 4 o'clock Eastern time start. Florida International versus UAB. That's right here. Giant line, but like we said, we're talking about heavy favorites all day. We're showing UAB is going to win this one about 95% of the time. FIU is 12-11. They're in 6th place in Conference USA. Denver Jones, the dynamic guards, their leader, 19.4 points per game. They're a abysmal, just horrendous rebounding team, 381st in college basketball at 32 rebounds per game. They can score a little bit, but there's not a ton here this year, and certainly overmatched by a 16-7 UAB team that's good for 3rd place in Conference USA, well above FIU. More balanced team for them. Eric Gaines, their leader in points per game and assists, 13.2 and 4.6 respectively. They're a high-powered offense, 82.2 points per game. They rebound the ball well. 41.6 is good for 9th in college basketball. So, our second pick, these are going to come fast and furious here this week. Our second pick in this parlay this week is going to be, I know, UAB minus 1,400 at Bovada. And that is going to take our parlay, now 2 picks in, all the way up to minus 445. Look, we're going to be in positive numbers, and we're going to take very little risk. What more can you ask for, right? So let's go to our next game. The Stony Brook Seawolves. No disrespect to the Stony Brook alum, including my high school history professor, Mr. Culp. They take on the Hofstra Pride. 16-8 are Hofstra. This game is another 4 o'clock start. Let's find this one here. Stony Brook versus Hofstra. Another big line. No kidding there. And we're showing that Hofstra is going to win this one about 95 to 96% of the time. Stony Brook is 8-15. They're in 7th place in the CAA. And their leader is Tyler Stevenson Moore, the guard, playing a ton. 37.7 minutes, 14.7 points per game. This is it's a roster without a ton of talent, is what it is. They're 399th in college basketball in points per game at 63.3. They're 323rd in rebounds per game at 33.4. And 364th in college basketball, the fewest assists per game that we've seen so far at 11.7. Moving over to Hofstra, 16-8, first place in the CAA, tied with Charleston, who is also 9-2, though Charleston's 21-3 overall to Hofstra's 16-8. The 9-2 conference schedule and 9-2 conference records have them equal at the top. They're led by guard Aaron Estrada, 21.6 points per game, and shooting an impressive 51.2% from the field. No small feat for somebody who doesn't take the easiest shots on a night-to-night basis. Average offense, 73.8 points per game, is 151st in the country. Average passing teams, 13.9 assists, 155th in the country. As I said, we're showing Hofstra is going to win this one almost every single time. And that's where we're going to land here. Hofstra minus 1,600 at Bovada, our third pick in this parlay. And we're getting closer. We're getting closer to positives. That parlay is now at minus 332. Our next game, a 5 o'clock start. The Illinois State Redbirds versus the Belmont Bruins. Let's get to this guy right here. Closer game than any we've seen so far. We're showing Belmont's going to win this one about 85% of the time. For Illinois State, they are 11-14. They're in 9th place in the MVC. Their leader, 11.7 points per game for guard Darius Burford. A little bit it scares you. That scares you. Hronis Sissoko, the forward, leads the team in field goal percentage, 58.1 points per game. And this is just another team without a lot of talent, 347th in the nation in points per game, 308th in rebounds per game, 442nd in the nation. New record, low assists that we've seen so far, 10.5 points, assists per game, pardon me. Again, overmatched against this Belmont team, 16-8. They're in first place in the MVC, tied with Drake, Southern Illinois, and Bradley. Ben Shepard, their leading scorer, and an impressive season for Mr. Shepard. Number 22 on the court, number 1 in our hearts, 19.5 points per game. And Keyshawn Davidson, the guard, the point guard who makes it all work for this team, 4.4 assists a game, leads the way. They are 65th in the nation in assists, thanks in no small part to Keyshawn Davidson at 15.3, and 134th in the nation, 74.4 points per game is good for 134th in the nation. So decent team. Again, we're overmatching our opponent here, and we are in fact going to take Belmont money line minus 625 at Bovada for our fourth pick in this parlay, which is now knocking on the door of positives, minus 196. The next game we're going to look at, The Columbia Lions versus the Princeton Tigers is 6 p.m. start here, right here. This is not a close one, as a lot of them have not been. We're showing that Princeton's going to win this about 97% of the time. Columbia is 6-17. They're in 8th place in the Ivy League, behind everyone. They're in 8th and last place in the Ivy League. Princeton, on the other hand, 15-6. They're in 1st place in the Ivy, a little bit ahead of Cornell and Yale. 6-2 versus 5-3 records for those guys. For Princeton, their leader, oh boy, is Tosan Abumamon. Apologies to Tosan, is how we're going to refer to him from here on out. Their leading points per game player, the forwards averaging 13.8 points per game, and leads the team in assists at 4.5, as well as field goal percentage at 53.5. Princeton, a really good rebounding team, 39 per game, good for 33rd in the nation. Also a top 100 offense, 75.9 points per game, good for 90th. As I said, Princeton's going to win this one about 97% of the time, and that's reflected here in this minus 1,800, but that's where we're going. Princeton minus 1,800, money line at Bovada, and that takes our parlay. Now, 5 picks in. Doesn't do a lot, to be quite frank. Up to minus 169. All right. We're going to get to the positives. We're going to get there. By the way, Super Bowl next week. Let's not forget that. If you're like, hey, Chris, this is a small number this week. Super Bowl next week. Chill out. We're going to have a lot of fun. We have got 3 games left. Another 6 o'clock start. Florida A&M versus Texas Southern right here. This is going to help us. We may be in positives after this one. We're showing that Texas Southern going to win this one about 91.5% of the time. And this is interesting, right? Because these are 2 teams that are both well below 500 for the season. Florida A&M is 4-16. They're in 11th place in the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Their leading scorer is Jordan Tillman, the guard, averaging 10.9 points per game. Also leads their team in assists at 2.4. They are 400th. 461st in the nation in points per game. They 56.9, pardon me. 379th in rebounds per game and 480th single-digit assists for this Florida A&M team. I don't know what that says about them, but when you have your leading assist man is 2.4 assists per game, probably not sharing the ball super well. Texas Southern is 7-15, 10th place in the SWAC. Only a couple of spots, one spot in the division above Florida A&M, and yet universe is different in terms of talent. They're led by Devon Barnes, 15.9 points per game for the forward. Also leads the team in assists at 2.1. Look, I'm not going to kid you here. Also, not a dynamic team. They're 255th in the nation in points per game at 69.5. They are 369th in the nation in assists, 11.6. But they're 50th in the country in rebounds per game at 38.5. And just substantially a better team than they're going to be going up against today. And that is why we're going to take Texas Southern, even with that record, minus 900 at Bovada. It's going to be our 6th pick in the parlay, and it's going to bring the whole thing up to minus 130. All right. We really got to get this up. Really got to get these numbers up. We will not leave this with a negative number. We're not going to do that, even if we have to add a couple more games onto the schedule today. Next game we're going to talk about, another 7 o'clock start, Washington State, UCLA. Let's find this one right here. All right, this is another good one. This is going to help us. We're showing UCLA is going to win this one about 92% of the time. Washington State's 10-14. They're in 7th place in the Pac-12. They're led by TJ Bamba, the guard, averaging 14.2 points per game. They're shooting only 40.7% from the field. Their top assist man, Justin Powell, the guard, averaging 2.8 assists to go along with his 10.6 points per game. They're scoring 68 points per game, which is good for 301st in the country. 35 rebounds a game is 229, and their 11.6 assists is 370th in the nation. Look, UCLA is the best team we've talked about so far today. The number 9 team in the country, 18-4, first place in the Pac-12, slightly ahead of UCLA, of USC and Arizona. Jaime Jaquez Jr. Leads the team in scoring. Seems like he's been around for forever. 16 points per game in 32.2 minutes. Tiger Campbell, the former five-star recruit, 4.7 assists, is their leader in terms of assists per game. Good team, UCLA, 127th in the nation, 34.6 points per game, and 95th in the country, another top 100 finish, 14.8 assists per game. I think I said points at first for that, 74.6, but if I didn't, that's what I meant. So we are going to take UCLA minus 750 at Bovada, our 7th pick of this parlay. And there it is, plus 101. We've done it. We're here. $100 wins $101. And I was concerned because this next game is the biggest line that we've had so far. This is an interesting experience. But man, so much has to go right to win $101 here. We're going to talk about Oregon State, the Beavs versus Arizona, 9:30 Eastern Time kickoff tonight. Gigantic line. Just gigantic. And for good reason. We're showing Arizona is going to win this one about 99% of the time. A loss would be a statistical anomaly in this case. Oregon State 9-14, 11th place in the Pac-12, ahead of only UC Berkeley. Their leading scorer is guard Jordan Pope. Leader in assists is forward Glenn Taylor Jr. at 2.6. They're 408th in points per game, 423rd in rebounds per game. 31 rebounds per game for a Pac-12 team is bad. And 424th in assists per game at 11. For Arizona, they're the number 5 team in the country. They're 20-3, second place in the Pac-12, behind only UCLA, who we just talked about. The forward, Tubelis, went off last night. 40 points in a big win over Oregon. Leads the team at 20.9 points per game. Kirk Krisa, the young guard, leads the team in assists, 5.7. Always been a heavy international flavor. As a matter of fact, Omar Ballo leads the team in field goal percentage at 65.3. Always been a big international flavor at Arizona. It's just the way they like to recruit. They're 11th in the nation. Look at these numbers. 11th in the nation in points per game, 83.3. 14th in the country in rebounds per game at 40.9. And 3rd in the nation in assists per game at 19.5. The line is gigantic. It is minus 2,800 at Bovada. So this begs the question: do we do what we've done the whole time, or do we think that Arizona is 21 points better than a really bad Oregon State team? I don't see the point. We went in here with a theme. We're going to stick with it. So we will take that Arizona money line. Any predictions for people watching how much this is going to bump this 101 up? I'm going to say it's going to bump it up to 108, plus 108, plus 105, something like that. In that 105 to 108 range is what I'm gonna guess. Let's do it. Money line, Arizona, minus 2,800, our final pick. And it is going to bump our parlay. Crushed it. I crushed it. Our parlay at Bovada all the way up. All the way up to plus 108. So there we are. This has been interesting. We took all the heavy favorites. We had plus money. Something very strange would have to happen for us not to win money on this, but nobody's going to get rich. And it's certainly the safest parlay that we've ever had. Is it worth it to you? Do what you want to do. All right, that is going to be it for this week's episode of In Pursuit of a Parlay. Plus 108, man. Plus 108. I've been Chris Horwedel. Thank you so much for checking back in. We will be back next week with the Super Bowl picks. EAGLES, Eagles. And as always, thank you so much for listening. You are appreciated. And we'll see you back here next week.